very difficult.
Thank you. Mr. Grewal.
And thank you, the witnesses, for coming. I mean, there's a lot of theories on what's going on in the Canadian housing market. I just had a few questions on data related, and I'm hoping that you guys can answer this. Can any of you guys tell me how many homes are purchased with less than 20% down payment?
I think we'd have. I don't have those numbers handy. I think that it's something that could be looked up, but we as brokers see a lot of first-time buyers, and there's no doubt there's an inordinate level of people that are putting a minimum down payment.
The rationale for the question is this: is that the new stress test will obviously impact people buying a home with less than 20% down, and then you guys are advocating for the fact that it's going to impact your business, but you should.
No, sorry. We're less concerned about our business than we are about the Canadian consumer and the housing market itself.
Either way, even if we're concerned about that, I think that at the basics, we would need to know how many Canadians are actually purchasing homes, and you guys are in the mortgage business, so I would feel like this is one of the numbers that you would know right off the top of the head. Is like, yeah, X percentage of Canadians are buying homes with less than 20% down.
I can say that we did a sweep of our home buyers from last year, and I don't know how many are less than 20% down, but on that sweep of our home buyers from last year, close to 20% of them would not have qualified for their mortgage this year that they did qualify for last year. One of our agents who does a lot of relocation for military relocation, close to 15% of her relocating members would not have qualified for the mortgage in the new area that they were forced relocation that they were moving to, given today's economy.
Second question: after the rules were implemented, have you guys seen a decrease in the number of people applying for a mortgage year over year?
Not applying, but certainly qualifying. And if I could go back to your first question, first-time home buyers, at least in Atlantic, Canada, or in my neck of the woods, which is Halifax, most first-time home buyers are coming in with 5%. It's not, the problem with it is that it's a ripple up effect. So if that first-time home buyer can't qualify with 5% down, whose home are they buying who may have a 20% plus? If the person who has a 20% plus in equity on their current resident that is selling to that first-time home buyer, how do they then sell that house and move on if we don't have a first-time home buyer qualifying at 5% without a stress test? The stress test eliminates that first-time home buyer in a lot of cases.
Okay. My next question is this: is that? Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
To the answer about the data, Canadian Real Estate Association will have tracking of all of the homes that changed hands this year, and if you were to cross-reference that against the records of insurance through CMHC and some of the private insurers, you actually should be able to figure out pretty quickly how many of those purchases were made with less than 20% down.
Yeah, no, I was just curious to see if you guys knew it right off the top of my head.
So, just so you know that in our industry, we're not able to collate all that data because it funnels through to the insurers, and that's where that data is held. We're just not going to be privy to that.
But you guys are also a part of the industry.
We're part of the industry, but we have to access the data.
My next question is actually extremely, how are you guys compensating the individual mortgage representative? So if I'm a mobile mortgage specialist in a city of Brampton, let's say, from my neck of the woods, what's the compensation model based on that?
First thing I want to point out is there's a big difference between a mortgage broker and a mobile mortgage specialist.
Okay,
a huge difference.
I know the difference.
So, well, then you should ask about the mortgage brokers respectfully, sir, because with
all due respect, sir, you didn't even bother listening to my question. My question was this: is that how do you guys compensate mobile mortgage specialists, or people that their business is to go get clients who purchase homes and get their mortgages approved?
We don't compensate mortgage mobile specialists because we are not them and we don't utilize them.
Okay.
We are mortgage brokers. There is a difference, sir. You need to understand.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hamilton.
Sir?
Yes, go ahead.
I think there's a distinction necessarily between an individual who's an employee of a financial institution who recruits for one lender versus a broker who's independent, who is a commission-based agent who would represent multiple lenders for origination of a loan.
The theory behind the question is this. Yes, go ahead.
To answer your question about the percentage or proportion of those purchaser who use 20% or less down payment. We ran a survey last year, about a year ago, for all the Quebec market, and we have an estimate of something of 68% of all purchases would be with 20% or less of a down payment. That does not amount necessarily to use of mortgage insurance, but we're talking about those who answer the survey with how much down payment did you put there.
Thank you so much, George. So my question would be this, is that 68% that bought homes with less than 20% down payment, they were subject to a stress test before our rules were implemented. Is that correct?
That in those statistics here, to be more precise, relate to a past 5-year period. So
yeah.
I cannot speak to which rules were in effect at what time there. And you're right, stress tests and other rules were put there. But one of the most popular terms for mortgage, and our colleagues here will correct me, is the 5-year fixed term is one. 67% of the borrowers use a 5-year fixed mortgage. So that's the novelty here with relating to the last October announcement.
The very key distinction actually between the current and the previous is that the stress test only applied to people who are getting less than a 5-year term. Because the logic is, on a 5-year fixed mortgage, you have 5 years to accrue equity before you're actually exposed to the current interest rate again. In today's interest rate environment, even with a 5% down, you're almost at 20% by the end of that first 5-year term. The new changes, though, require everybody to suffer that stress test as a qualification mechanism.
We should define that stress test. I mean, stress test, the stress test for mortgages has always been there. That's the underwriting qualification criteria. It was maybe enhanced, but this idea that it's something new, it's not new. We've always had criteria for qualification. It was just actually made it a little bit more difficult or stringent. So these checks and balances have been in place for quite some time.
Raj, do you have one quick wrap-up question?
Yeah, just like what we heard from testimony is that the government is overreaching, that we're over-regulating, and that the impact is going to slow down the housing market. And it's going to have a negative impact on first-time buyers. Is there any actual research, or are you guys all of the opinion that it's too early to tell?
It is not too early to tell. Our association has a very large number of mortgage lenders and insurers actually as part of our constituent, and they will tell us specifically they've seen reductions in the number of applications for loans that they've funded and the number of insurance applications that they have provided cover for. There's some panelists actually arriving at the next session that will probably have much more personal data to be able to share with you on those questions.
Our numbers are down in the last 2 months, so I mean it's
Last year?
probably 30%.
30%.
Yeah. Drawing from the 2012 announcement to shorten the amortization period from 30 years to 25 years.
You're both okay.
20%,
We'll go until
21% housing start reduction in Quebec, 6% or 8% decrease in resale, and the impact of that shortening had the result of pricing out 39,000 households in Quebec who were not necessarily looking to buy, but had they wanted to buy, could not buy a house at average price then, given the change in the income requirement to purchase an average price rate.
Okay, just hang on. Has everyone answered your last question? Okay, quickly.
You're saying that is the market slowing down? Well, yes, it's going to slow down, but it's going to also, it's a bit early to say, but it's going to slow down, obviously, the first-time buyers, the people who are on the fringes. But one compounding effect that we may see coming forward is that a first-time home buyer, what were they before? They were most likely a renter. And we have a limited rental pool in many centers. Now, the problem is that if you keep people in the rental pool and you can't get people to qualify as first-time buyers, you're going to have another stress test, in a sense, or a difficulty for people who want to rent. And those rents could possibly go up. So the overall cost is not just to the home purchaser, but to the actual person who's looking to rent. In Vancouver, the vacancy rate is very low. If we don't remove people from the rental pool and make them first-time buyers, then we have an issue of housing again on the rental side.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there, sir. We'll go to Mr. Dittel.
Thank you, Chair.